Hey y'all, it's Nikki. I have to tell you about Tecovas boots. I finally have a pair and they're handmade, high quality, stylish, and comfortable. I even got them customized with leather stamping. The folks at Tecovas will help you find just the right pair. So swing by for yours at the Tecovas flagship on South Congress or their store at the Domain. Plus, good news, they just opened a new store in Georgetown at 709 Main Street for those of y'all that live a little further north. So come shop with me at Tecovas. That's TECOVAS.com. Don't go gently, y'all. Today on CityCast Austin, there are 5 city council seats on the ballot this November, and they represent half of the entire city, y'all. Now, obviously, there is a presidential race this year, and we have a mayoral race as well, but you should really be paying attention to these two. Executive producer Eva Ruth Moravec interviewed a City Hall expert to break them all down. CityCast Austin is brought to you by our exclusive launch sponsor, Tecovas. It's Wednesday, October 15th. I'm Nikki Devon, and this is what Austin's talking about.
Hello. Thanks so much for joining me. I am here today with Liz Pagano, the editor of Austin Monitor. We have 10 seats on the Austin City Council, plus the mayor. And this year we've got 5 up for grabs. Like, how big of a deal is this 5-seat election going to be?
Well, I guess it depends who gets reelected. 3 of the seats have incumbents. So if those people get reelected, there'll only be 2 seats that shift over. Right now, council's pretty much on the same page on a lot of issues. And so one of the seats that an incumbent is leaving is District 10, and Allison Alter tends to be one of the people who sort of dissents from the popular opinion. So if somebody wild gets elected there, that wouldn't really change anything. So, and District 7, which I'm sure we'll get to, that's also going to be a new person, but it could be sort of the same vibe, or it could be a different vibe.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got the 5 seats are District 2, District 4, District 6, District 7, and District 10.
Yeah.
And as you kind of alluded to, 2 of those seats are held by council members who are leaving. Just either they're term limited out or deciding not to run. So they're kind of like open seats. Why don't we start with Allison Alter's seat, District 10. She's stepping down. She's decided she doesn't want to run. What does her loss mean to the city council? And then who's vying to take her place? What should we know about the candidates?
Allison tends to be, she's kind of like the lone sort of neighborhoody voice on city council for the most part at this time. And the race for her seat is sort of like a traditional Austin City Council race. I'm going to be talking a lot, I think, about housing and development, because that everybody tends to be on the same page for the most part. And that's where candidates sort of differ. And in this case, in District 10, that's certainly the case. There's Ashika Ganguly, who differs from Allison Alter. She's more of an urbanist. She's pro-housing reform, a big supporter of Project Connect. And then Mark Dushin, who's Allison, I think, has endorsed, is more of a successor to her reign or what have you. He's yeah.
And when you said she's neighborhoody, what did you mean by that?
She tends to listen to more of the neighborhood concerns, and the neighborhood concerns tend to be ooh, don't build that. That's too big. Not near me.
Okay.
I guess people say NIMBY versus YIMBY. Yes, in my backyard versus not in my backyard. Home was an initiative that passed recently that reduced lot sizes and is going to allow for a lot more development in Austin. So a lot of people sort of are divided over whether they're fully supporting home or skeptical of home. And she's more skeptical of home and wants things to maybe move a little slower.
And where is her district?
It's District 10. It's West Austin. It's probably it's the richest district, I think. And it tends to be like the most politically engaged district. Like prior to us having districts on city council, like I believe almost all the city council members came from District 10, before it was like mandated that it was distributed around the city. So people really turn out and really pay attention in this race.
Okay, so we're looking at, she's endorsed Mark Dushan.
Yeah.
So could be kind of a more of the same situation in that seat, at least as far as like priorities and what they're looking at. Okay.
Yeah.
So the other seat that's going to be an open race is District 7, held by Leslie Poole, who's been there for a little while, right?
She's been District 7's like only city council member.
There are quite a few people running for this district. Can you tell us where it is and who is in this race, who's kind of the front runner so far?
Yeah. District 7, central North Austin. So it includes neighborhoods like Crestview and Allendale, and then also the Domain. So it kind of goes up. It's like also a really engaged area. Like the neighborhoods tend to be really active and passionate. And interestingly, like though it's been Leslie Poole since 2015 who's represented that district, she's changed a lot. So she used to, when she was elected, she was very neighborhoody, like I said. And then she's totally switched and actually was the sponsor of the home initiative. So she's totally flipped to being like very pro density and very pro like housing, let's get it built. Like, I don't know if District 7, how they feel about her flip. Did they flip along with her? Like, right. Or, like what's going on? So yeah, there's 6 candidates.
So who are these 6, or who's the front runner of that pack?
It's hard to say who the front runner is. The person that's raised the most money is Mike Siegel. So people are like, I guess he's the front runner. People kind of know him because he ran for Congress twice. Like he's really politically active. Like he's an organizer. He was an assistant city attorney, so he really knows what's going on at the city. Another person that people assume is going to be sort of strong is Gary Bledsoe.
Yeah, he's the head of the NAACP.
Yeah.
I know he's always at the Capitol also advocating for different things. He seems to be pretty well known. I don't know how much that matters in this race.
It probably matters. I mean, given that there's so many people like trying to pick people out, he is well known, and I think he's like pretty well respected. He's talked a lot about more transparency on city council. He seems to be critical of the home initiative, but just sort of the manner in which it was passed, that there wasn't enough discussion.
I see.
All the candidates are pretty strong. Like we'll see in another couple races, there are people who just sign up and don't really participate. Like everybody's participating and really running for it. So this district will probably go into a runoff. So basically, if somebody doesn't get more than 50% of the vote, then there's another election where the top 2 people have their own election. So
particularly the ones with a pretty crowded field, we can expect to get pushed into a runoff.
Pretty much that's usually what happens. That's like a totally different scenario too, because this is like a presidential election where the turnout is really high for those. It's like 71%. And then for the runoffs, it's like 6% usually. So it's a totally different scenario.
There's so many different ways things could flip if it does get to a runoff in that situation, when just a few people actually make a difference in those votes.
Yeah.
So that was D7. Anybody else we should know about in the pool to replace Poole?
Todd Shaw was on the planning commission. He seems he's sort of like advocating for less divisiveness and wants people to come together. So he seems sort of practical. He just wants things like he thinks the land development code should be rewritten, but because it's hard, it's unmanageable right now. Edwin Batista is a Gen Z representative who has like a really extensive platform that's interesting. But he's like 26 years old. So I don't know. He says he'll donate a third of his salary back to the district, which I thought was interesting.
Oh, nice.
And Pierre Nguyen is he's like an EMT and a U.S. Coast Guard reservist, and he serves on the Public Safety Commission. So he's very into public safety stuff. Like I said, everybody's largely on the same page, except for like how they feel about home and how they feel about how quickly people should be making these, or council should be making these development changes. So.
Interesting. Okay, so let's toss things up a bit. So the other 3 seats are all held by someone now who is going to continue to run, or who is running for their seat again. So they all have incumbents. Let's, I guess, start with District 2. So this is Vanessa Fuentes' district.
Mm-hmm.
And what is she kind of known for? What do people like about her, and who is she facing?
I think people like her. Like, she sort of hit the ground running. I was really impressed when she was elected. Like, a lot of times it takes people a little bit of time to get up to speed. But she's very active. I don't know if that's a normal word to say. Like, she really represents her district well. And I think that's reflected in, she has one challenger, Robert Reynolds, who I guess is a Republican. He kind of isn't like really participating. Like, he's not showing up to forums. Yeah.
Is he well known in some other way?
He ran for the District 51 seat a couple times and lost. Okay. But no, I know we try to interview all the candidates at the Austin Monitor, and he hasn't responded, and he hasn't responded to a lot of places.
Mm-hmm. Hard to get your message out without participating in the forums and such.
So, and despite that, Vanessa's raised like over $100,000 already.
Oh, wow.
And I would say that she's probably going to get reelected.
Okay. And for people who don't know, where is District 2?
District 2 is southeast Austin. So like Dove Springs, Del Valley, like that area. It's not very Republican.
I mean, you mentioned Republican, but these are all nonpartisan seats, right? I mean,
yes. Thanks for that reminder.
Although people, I guess politics come in the way that you kind of figure out where they stand on issues.
Yeah, it's nonpartisan. That's sort of the rule, like, which means that there's like not a primary, but that doesn't stop people from identifying as Republicans when they're running. Mostly people identify as Republicans because it's so
different,
unusual, in Austin to stand out.
District 4 has had a slant to it. I mean, it was Greg Kassar's former seat, who is now up in D.C. And running for I think the head of the Progressive Caucus there. So he's continuing to be pretty progressive. And then that seat was taken over by Jose Chito Vela, who is running again now, right? But he's got a few opponents, a few challengers. What do you think about his race?
Yeah, he had a special election to replace Greg because Greg was, running for Congress. And he managed to like win. I think there were 5 or 6 people in 2022, and he won outright, no runoff, which was impressive. And his main challenger is Monica Guzman, who ran in 2022 also. And I think she got like 14% of the vote. Cheeto is like very YIMBY, like very excited about all the housing reform, wants to push that a lot more. Monica is with Go Austin, Vamos Austin. She's always been at City Hall. She's been a community organizer for a long time. And she's very worried about displacement. She's not necessarily against home, but she's worried about how quickly stuff is moving and would like to see it like slow down a lot. And then there were like 3 other candidates. Eduardo Romero, who also kind of isn't participating that much. Jim Rabuck, who appears to be into private-public partnerships and works for the U.S. Department of Defense, but I haven't found much information about him either. And Louis Heron III, who challenged Greg for all of his races.
Okay.
He does go to forums. He is conservative also.
Huh.
Yeah, he's just skeptical of stuff and thinks the city is going in the wrong direction.
Okay.
But mostly, I think it's Cheeto versus Monica, and Cheeto has like probably a lot of support.
You think he's safe for the most part, or?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
I think so. Well, I guess we'll see.
Could get a little tight though with her, as much as she's well known. And which part of town is District 4?
Northeast, I guess.
Okay. And then, so last but not least, we have District 6, which has also been an interesting seat. It was held by Don Zimmerman for a little bit. Don Zimmerman was, I think, the only Republican while he was on council. Is that right?
Definitely. And he was really Republican.
Very Republican. And then that flipped to Jimmy Flanagan, who was a Democrat. Mm-hmm. And then Mackenzie Kelly won the seat in 2020. Mm-hmm. And she's pretty well known for defending the Austin Police Department and really, going to bat for them. Mm-hmm. Is she safe with this re-election campaign?
Well, as you just detailed, District 6 does flip back and forth. So I think
kind of depends on who shows up, I guess.
But it's only been 3 elections, so it's hard to say that will always be the case. Mackenzie is conservative. Before she was elected, a big deal was made of that. She's a lot more subdued than Don Zimmerman was. And she really focuses on public safety. And that's sort of the only thing. She has the support of all the public safety unions and departments because of that. And her challenger is progressive.
Oh.
Krista Lane.
Yeah, Krista Lane is known for her work fighting off the right-wing attempt to take over the Round Rock School Board. So do you think this could be a race about political identity? Are they playing into that very much?
Interestingly, she seems to be focused on sort of the practicalities about how Kelly is interacting with the district, that she's not communicating a lot or, just going after that, which kind of makes sense. I personally think that a lot is made about Jimmy not getting reelected and things flipping from Republican to Democrat. Mm-hmm. But it is city council, and these were smaller elections, with the smaller turnout. And I think a lot of times things hinge on zoning cases, and disgruntled neighborhoods that just turn out because they were mad about some decision that they made locally,
speed bumps or lack of speed bumps.
Yeah. I mean, that probably won't be the case in the election coming up in November, because it's presidential voters who are there's a lot more of them and they're less dialed in to these local races.
Right, to the local stuff. Mm-hmm.
This is the first time it aligns with a presidential election. Voters approved changing the election calendar when Kirk was elected in 2022, because his term's only been 2 years because of that, because they needed to switch the calendar. Oh. People have sort of weirdly argued against it for a while, because it was well, if you don't study and know when to show up, you shouldn't get to vote or whatever.
Oh yeah, let's make it harder for people to participate in democracy.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. This is a different scenario.
Interesting. Do you have any predictions for Mackenzie Kelly or for that race?
No, not that race.
Okay, yeah, we're just going to wait and see what happens there.
No, I really don't know.
Yeah.
And District 6 is far northwest. Some of it's in Williamson County. It's
politics aside, this particular council tends to be in agreement on most things. Is that, or how would you kind of, how do they play together?
They're being a little strange recently because they agree. There's not a lot of discussion. There's not a lot of at council meetings, there's not a lot of interaction with people who have come to speak. There's a sense that they know what they're going to vote on and they just sort of vote on it. It's a lot different from Adler's city council, which would talk endlessly back and forth about everything and engage. It's the opposite. So meetings are like very efficient and short.
Almost too short, maybe.
I don't know. I'm finding it a little unsettling personally.
Yeah.
And other people are. It's coming up in like these elections. People are talking about it as sort of a lack of transparency and like a weird process.
Mm-hmm.
They vote on a consent agenda and every council member gives a little speech on why they're doing something great or whatever. So that's sort of the bulk of the talking, but there's not a lot of deliberation. So that's the vibe that I think is most likely to change out of this election. Because technically it's not a strong mayor system. So the mayor doesn't have more power than any city council member aside from being elected at large, so they're sort of more well known. But they do run the meetings. That's the other thing. And like, I guess that's really important because the meetings are so different right now than they were, both annoying in their own way.
Yeah. Do you see any of these races like addressing that, like saying, I will bring more transparency to these meetings?
Yeah. People are talking about it, particularly people who have been engaged over the last 2 years and came to speak and are just sort of like disgruntled because they didn't feel like they were heard, or there've been like a couple lawsuits that the city has lost over the Open Meetings Act.
Right.
People are talking about the DPS partnership and how that went down, the police contract, that wasn't initially made public. These sorts of things, aside from the land development stuff, they're kind of bubbling up in the conversation.
So it's made it possibly motivating voters.
Possibly, yeah.
And I mean, just kind of zooming out, Austin's a huge place. We have almost 1 million. I mean, it's 1 million people, but it just depends on where you draw the lines, really. And, as you've mentioned, that turnout's usually pretty high during presidential elections. Why should people cast a vote for their city council seat?
Because it's important. It like changes how like Austin grows, depending on what you think is important. Like, I don't know, it really changes how the city is run, and it really changes how the city is developed, because that's like the main power that the city has, that the state doesn't immediately go,
Not yet, at least. I'm sure in January they'll.
They have been working on it, but like
every session, the legislative session, lawmakers pick on Austin for different ordinances that they don't like or different actions. So, is that something that anyone on council is sort of like preparing for? Like, how do we kind of keep our elbows out, or hey, let's be more proactive or more defensive on the front end, to prevent some of that?
I mean, council does try to do that. I mean, they have a legislative agenda every year, but it doesn't go that far. They have been passing a lot of resolutions like the abortion travel fund and things. And there's always then we get sued or trying to legalize marijuana-ish, and then there's always a back and forth, and it just ends up in courts, and then sometimes it works out for us. I will say that because of Kirk's time at the legislature, I think the measures are a little more effective, like just knowing what works and what absolutely won't work. But yeah, I think it's something that council's constantly thinking about and trying to sort of preserve Austin in this context, but it's not that easy because the state always supersedes the city. So
right.
Yeah.
What is on your big watch list, like election night? Which race are you going to be the most focused on of these, or anything else on the ballot?
Well, obviously, like the mayoral race, it's like everybody versus Kirk Watson,
right?
But there are enough people that maybe there would be a runoff. I'm not totally sure, but it's interesting nonetheless. District 7 is pretty fun. District 6 is fun.
Yeah, and I know we didn't touch much on the mayor in this interview. We have a Mayoral Mondays series that's been running, and we interviewed each of the 5 candidates for mayor. Yeah, it should be an interesting one. And then just lastly, Liz, is there anything else that you think we should know about these candidates or the seats or council in general before we go vote for these people?
Well, we're going to be running like a series where we do talk to all the candidates
Awesome.
that respond to us that are participating. If you want to get to know them better, the League of Women Voters also has panels that are available like on the city website or if you Google. So if you're in a district that is up for reelection, you can just like listen to that. You don't even have to watch it to sort of get a sense of the candidates and like who you might want to represent you.
Yeah. Nice.
There's lots of information out there.
Yeah.
You don't have to learn about all of the districts, just your own. Don't worry about it. So don't get overwhelmed.
Tune out the other ones. Figure out which district you live in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I feel much more informed, and I'm excited to see what shakes out this year. So thanks a lot, Liz.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on.
Next up, let's walk a mile in Lauren Hartnett's boots, brought to you by our launch sponsor, Tecovas. Hello, it's Nikki, y'all, and I am here with Lauren Hartnett with OSBOS Social Housing, and we are going to get to know you. So, off top, who are you and what is your job?
I'm Lauren Hartnett. I moved to Austin about 20 years ago to get my geology degree from the University of Texas, and I've been here ever since. Now I'm a partner in a company that focuses on building affordable housing, and also with a company called Plug-in House, which manufactures and installs innovative prefab housing for emergency shelters for those experiencing homelessness and backyard homes.
What is your side job now that it's Halloween?
My side job is Halloween. Basically, starting in September, every night and weekend, I am either sewing, beading, gluing, molding foam into a giant sandworm, carving tombstones out of foam, and getting ready for the annual Cherrywood French Place Halloween Parade.
Y'all been doing it for a while. So what drew you to it? Like, other than, like, is it just that Halloween is your favorite holiday?
My husband and I were very fortunate to have bought a home in Cherrywood 12 years ago. And we actually kind of moved in right around Halloween and kind of heard around the neighborhood and then saw with our own eyes that there's this large parade that comes down our street. And I live for Halloween, so I was beyond excited and thrilled to be part of this tradition and help keep it going. I think it's really important that when you move to an area, when you're new to an area, to acknowledge and try to be a part of carrying on traditions. That's the number one way to combat gentrification, in my opinion, is to be a part of the community that you move to and to embrace and help carry on these traditions. It is hundreds of people. I literally have to recruit friends to come help me hand out candy. And we also have drinks for the adults. And it's just this, one of those organic neighborhood parties that is very classic Austin culture and really is part of what makes Austin special.
So let's walk a mile in your boots. What do you do in an average day to prepare for the spectacle?
Of course, we have to rent the margarita machine and get tons of Costco candy. September 1, we call Margarita Man and get on the rental books. I guess throughout the year, I kind of think about what I want to do, for that year. It wasn't last year, it was the year before, where it was that siren from Love, Death, Robots. And it was it was 100 hours of beating. Like it took me so long. So every night after work, get home and maybe probably at 1 a.m. I'd just be beating. And so I put on scary movies only. That's the rule. You only can watch scary movies while you're doing Halloween decorating or costume crafting. This year, I'm going to be a Miss Argentina from Beetlejuice to keep up with the Beetlejuice theme.
Yes. Yes.
This year, I finally achieved my dream of building a giant replica of the Beetlejuice sandworm. And so kind of the same deal. I have 25 feet of AC duct that I just started wrapping with black and white duct tape. And then never really sculpted anything before, but I got this foam clay stuff and started carving the multiple worm heads out of it. Already getting tons of people stopping by the house, which is always satisfying. And that's why I do this, right? It's the joy that and excitement on people's faces when they see either the decorations or the costumes. You know, it brings people so much joy, which then brings me joy.
So let's talk a little bit about why this matters to Austin.
Yeah, so it just really brings the community together in the most fun, spectacular way. It has that wonderful, small town in a big city, funky Austin vibe that just you can't really replicate anywhere else. So it's very important to me to be part of these traditions and to continue to encourage anyone new that moves to the neighborhood. Right, I always tell them, "Oh, you guys getting ready for Halloween? You got to make sure you're part of Halloween," and that just and tell them all about the parade and get them excited for it. That way, it carries on.
Yeah. And it kind of speaks to what you do, honestly, in your day job. Just give me a little bit about how that matters to Austin, because I think the correlation is there.
You can't have access to education or quality health care or quality jobs or opportunity if you don't have stable housing.
Exactly.
The Austin real estate market has really priced out a lot of people, and it's been this haven of sorts, or fostered at least communities of artists, creatives, musicians, and it's very difficult to foster that culture and attract bohemians when the only houses available are $1 million, or you're spending upwards of $2,000 a month on rent. You're going to price out a lot of cool people, and there'll only be a city full of tech bros and CEOs.
They're not going to put sandworms in their yard. Once Halloween is done, everything is built. Once it's not, like, what do you do to have fun when all the work is over?
I love going to see a show at the Skylark. Skylark's probably one of my favorite joints in Austin. Large part because it is probably the most diverse watering hole in Austin, hands down. And the music's fantastic. Go enjoy a happy hour at Hole in the Wall. And I'm gonna probably, this is, now that I've noticed this, a lot of what I do to relax is going to bars.
Nice. Well, Lauren, thank you so much for being here. The parade, 5:30, French Place and Manor Road. And if you walk by the house with the gigantic sandworm, you'll see all of the hard work that Lauren's been putting in.
You also can't miss that.
You can't miss that. We're going to have links for you in our show notes as well, so you're just a click away. Thank you for listening. Thank you to Tecovas for sponsoring this interview, and thank you to Lauren for taking the time.
Thank you, Nikki.
That's all for today here on CityCast Austin. You can find links to Liz's work in our show notes. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend, rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our Hey Austin newsletter. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Bye, y'all.